Before we begin, I just want to remind you that Somewhere Sinister is back up and running. We're getting through Season 4 and already starting to work on Season 5, so if you like this show, you'll probably like that one, so check it out. A link is in the description. In 2021, Gabby Petito set out on a cross-country journey around the United States with her fiancé, Brian Laundrie. They documented the journey on Instagram and even started a YouTube channel, and the online community watched as they traveled from one national park to the next, hiking, camping, and enjoying nature with each other. To the world, they looked like a happy couple, making the most of their youth and being madly in love. Soon, that would all come crashing down, and the world would watch in real time as so many lives around them were destroyed forever. This is Monsters. Brian Laundrie was born on November 18, 1997, the second of two children born to Chris and Roberta Laundrie. His sister, Cassie, was 8 years older than him. He grew up on Long Island in New York and attended Bayport Blue Point High School, which is where he met Gabby. Gabrielle Petito, who went by Gabby, was born on March 19, 1999 to Joe Petito and Nicole Schmidt in Blue Point, New York. Her parents divorced not long after she was born. Both of her parents remarried, and the family said that she had a great relationship with both of her step-parents, Jim Schmidt and Tara Petito. She was the oldest of 6 children between the two couples. Gabby's first taste of the spotlight came in 2013 when she and her siblings appeared in a music video that was a tribute to the victims of the Sandy Hook shooting. 8 years later, Gabby would be in the spotlight again, and the reason would be just as tragic. Gabby attended Bayport Blue Point High School and was a sophomore when she met Brian, who was a junior. She was passionate about art and even had art displayed at her school. After she graduated, her artwork was chosen to be the logo for the Great South Bay Coalition. After Brian had graduated in 2016, his family moved from Long Island to Northport, Florida. He and Gabby broke up when he moved, and the couple weren't dating for the next 2.5 years. Gabby graduated the following year and decided she wanted a change, so she moved to Wilmington, North Carolina. There, she worked as a hostess at a restaurant called Smoke on the Water. Her co-workers would say she was a sweet person who seemed happy in the area. Gabby even made plans to go to Cape Fear Community College, though she never started classes. In 2019, Gabby and Brian decided to get back together, and Gabby moved to Northport where she lived with Brian and his family. The couple both worked at a local Publix grocery store where Brian worked in the produce department and Gabby was a pharmacy technician. They worked there for less than a year when the COVID pandemic hit, and they both quit their jobs to take a road trip to California. They visited the beach, Yosemite National Park, and Las Vegas, all while Gabby posted details of the trip to her Instagram account. As far as the world could see, the couple were happy and having a blast traveling, so it wasn't a surprise when, after returning from their trip, they announced their engagement soon after. Gabby posted on social media, quote, "Brian asked me to marry him, and I said yes. You make life feel unreal, and every day is such a dream." They didn't pick a wedding date because of the pandemic, and instead they decided to do some more traveling. They had spent more money than they wanted to on their trip out west. Having driven Brian's Nissan Sentra meant that they had to stay in hotels from time to time, so for their next adventure, they purchased a 2012 Ford Transit Connect. They renovated the van to become the perfect small home to use to see the country. They took a shorter trip to the Appalachian Trail in Georgia in the spring of 2001. Gabby spent her 22nd birthday hiking in the mountains. They planned on taking a 4-month-long trip around the United States, and they left Florida on June 3, 2021. They went north to Blue Point to attend the graduation ceremony of Gabby's brother and visited family. They made a number of stops on their way north. They stopped at Fletcher Park about 2 hours away from Northport. Then they went northeast for about an hour and stayed at the Fort Wilderness campground near Disney World. It's believed they stopped in North Carolina at some point, likely so Gabby could visit some friends. From there, they stopped in Virginia and hiked the Cedar Creek Trail. A couple of hours north of that, they hiked another trail called Buzzard Hill. When they got to New York, they picked up Gabby's brother TJ, and the three of them went 3 hours away to hike to Shahola Falls in Pennsylvania. They returned the day before TJ's graduation, and he posted about the trip to his social media. On July 2nd, a week after the graduation ceremony, Brian and Gabby left New York and headed west. The following day, Gabby posted a video of her and Brian riding skateboards over the old Chain of Rocks Bridge, which traverses the Mississippi River between Illinois and Missouri. 2 days later, they reached Monument Rocks in Kansas. The couple explored the national monument that is often referred to as the Chalk Pyramids, and Gabby posted a number of pictures to her Instagram account. From Monument Rocks, Gabby and Brian drove 4 hours west to Colorado Springs. They spent a few days there before traveling about 3 hours south to the Great Sand Dune National Park. While they camped there over 2 nights, they hiked to the 4.5-mile Dunes Trail. They left the sand dunes on July 10th, and as they traveled west, they stopped at the Mesa Verde National Park, where they hiked 2 trails. They hiked the Sheeps Creek Hot Springs Trail and the Balcony House Loop Trail. Continuing to slowly make their way west, the next day they hiked the Farview Sites Complex. Instead of going straight into Utah, they went southwest into Arizona. They drove across the top of Arizona and then took Highway 89 north to Utah, grabbing a photo together under the Welcome to Utah sign. Their next stop was at Zion National Park, where they camped for a few days and hiked a number of trails. Gabby posted a lot of photos to her Instagram and even a video of their campsite. From there, they traveled a few hours northeast to Bryce Canyon National Park. On their way, they made a detour to the Cedar Break National Monument. There they hiked the Peekaboo Loop Trail and camped for several days. Then they drove a couple more hours north to Mystic Hot Springs. Pictures posted online showed Gabby relaxing in the water and an intimate photo of her and Brian sharing a kiss in the hot springs. The couple traveled about 3 hours east to Canyonlands National Park, and Gabby posted a collection of photographs from there. The last photograph she posted from Canyonlands was on July 31st, and she wouldn't post anything online for the next 11 days. On August 12th, Gabby posted a bunch of photos from Arches National Park in Moab, but from what she wrote in the description of the post, it was likely that the pictures were taken in the weeks prior. It's not exactly clear when they were there, and their next stop would not be another national park. At 4:39 p.m. on August 12, 2021, a 911 call was placed from a concerned citizen who said he had seen a young couple arguing and that the man had slapped the woman. He told the operator that they were near the Moonflower Community Co-op, and as he drove by, he saw the man slap the woman. He said that he stopped his car and the couple ran up and down the sidewalk, with the man continuing to hit the woman before they got into a white Ford van with a Florida license plate and drove away. He described which way the van headed, and an officer was called out to find the van.
Driver is showing some obscure driving, possibly intoxicated. Currently doing 45 miles an hour. Zone through here is 25. Oh! Subject just hit the curb. Correction, speed limit is 15.
When the officer caught up with the van, Brian had been driving and he was speeding and driving erratically. The van was pulled over and officers separated the two and questioned them individually.
I have really bad OCD, and I was just cleaning and straightening up the back of the van before, and I was apologizing to him and saying, I'm sorry that I'm so mean, because sometimes I have OCD and sometimes I just get really frustrated. Not like mean towards him, I just like, I guess my vibe is like, I hear him be like in a bad mood. And I was just saying, I'm sorry if I'm in a bad mood. I've just been really stressed. I had so much work I was doing on my computer this morning.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I used to work at an organic juice bar, but I just quit my job.
Okay.
I was a nutritionist. That's
okay.
That's my
That's
job.
cool.
And I just quit my job to travel across the country, and I'm trying to start a blog. I have a blog and stuff. So I've been building my website. So I've just been really stressed, and he doesn't really believe that I could do any of it. So that's kind of been like a, I don't know. He's like down there. I don't know. We've just been fighting all morning, and he wouldn't let me in the car before. And then
Why wouldn't he let you in the car? Because of your OCD?
He told me I needed to calm down. Yeah. But I'm perfectly calm. I'm calm all the time. And he really stresses me out. And this is a rough morning.
She just gets worked up sometimes, and I try and really distance myself from her. So like I lock the car and I walk away from her. What happened this morning is that she's trying to start up like her own little website blog and everything. So I give her time, and we really had a nice morning if anything. But she just got worked up because we were trying to get going and get our day going because we want to go hike arches before the summer time.
Okay. You want to tell me about those scratches on your face?
She had a cell phone in her hand. That's why I was pushing her away, because she wanted. I locked the keys so I could walk away. I said, let's just take a breather and let's not, go anywhere. Let's just calm down for a minute. She was getting worked up, and then she had her phone and was trying to get the keys from me. So I got away. I was just trying to. I know I shouldn't push, but I was just trying to push her away to go. Let's just take a minute, step back, and breathe. And she got me with her phone.
Can I see your hand? Oh, you got a mark right here.
Oh, that's from a wire.
That's from a wire?
Yeah.
While being questioned, Brian told the officer that it had been a long day and they had gotten into a disagreement about a little bit of dirt in the van and that he had moved some food around. He went on to say that they had also been arguing about some relationship things. He could tell that Gabby was getting worked up, so he locked the van and suggested they go for a walk. Gabby wanted the keys to the van, and when she was trying to get them, he was pushing her away. Of course, in this scenario, Brian claimed it was Gabby who had attacked him by slapping him in the face. When she was asked about that, she said it was true. Still, Gabby had an injury to her left cheek and her arm, and when she was asked how she got the injuries, she first said she didn't know. Then she said that, after she slapped him, Brian grabbed her arm to keep her from slapping him again. Then she said he grabbed her face, and that's how she got the scratches on her cheek. After Gabby admitted to having hit Brian first, it seemed like the officers were trying to help the couple out. The incident was later investigated, and it was determined that the officers involved believed that whoever had instigated the fight had to have intended to hurt the person that they had attacked in order to justify them being arrested.
This is a very, very important question. How you answer this question is going to determine what happens next. But the only person who can answer this question is you. Think very hard before you answer the question. Do not quickly answer it. Think very hard. When you slapped him those times, were you attempting to cause him physical pain or physical impairment? Was that what you were attempting to do to him? What were you attempting to do? What was the reason behind the slapping and stuff? What was it you were attempting to accomplish by slapping?
I was trying to get him to stop telling me to calm down.
Well, it doesn't sound to me like she attempted to injure him. It's your call. This is 100% your call. I support you either way. I'll let you get back to your parents, okay?
Oh, thank you.
When the officers asked Gabby why she had slapped Brian, she said it was to get him to stop telling her to calm down. You can hear the officer on the video then say, quote, "Well, it doesn't sound to me like she attempted to injure him." After the investigation into the incident, authorities announced that these officers didn't have a clear understanding of the law they were using. Now, in hindsight, people have blamed the police for not protecting Gabby, but I don't think it's that simple. I think these officers thought they were helping out a young couple who had just gotten into a heated argument. Having one of them get arrested while they were in the middle of traveling would have been a major burden, and since neither of them seemed to be in danger, at least the officers didn't perceive any danger. They were trying to help them out by just letting them go. They even separated the two for the night, letting Gabby stay in the van and giving Brian a ride to a hotel. That said, they should have known the warning signs of domestic abuse. That failure is on the police department in general, but with proper training, these officers might have seen more warning signs than they did. First, the way Brian dismisses Gabby, literally calling her crazy to one officer. Despite her being so upset, he doesn't really show much concern for her.
It's just crazy.
At the same time, Gabby immediately took the blame for everything.
I was apologizing to him and saying, I'm sorry that I'm so mean, because sometimes I have OCD and sometimes I just get really frustrated. Not like mean towards him, I just like, I guess my vibe is like, I hear him be like in a bad mood. And I was just saying, I'm sorry if I'm in a bad mood.
Victims of domestic abuse are often convinced that all of the problems in the relationship are their fault, and her saying she was apologizing to him for being so mean was a clear red flag. Her changing her story about how she had gotten her injuries, trying to minimize what Brian had done to her, should have been another detail that told the officers something more serious was going on. Then there was the 911 caller's statement. He said he had seen Brian hit Gabby and also saw them running up and down the sidewalk while Brian continued to hit her. That should have been taken into account as the officers took the couple's statements, which would have put those statements into better context. Separating the two for the night was a good idea by the officers involved, but it would ultimately not be enough to save Gabby's life. The next day, Brian and Gabby reunited, but before they continued their journey, Brian flew back to Florida on August 17th. They drove to Salt Lake City, where Gabby stayed in a hotel while Brian was away. He flew out of Salt Lake City Airport, and in Florida, he emptied and closed a storage unit in order to save money. The couple were talking about extending their trip, and they were trying to relieve some unneeded debts. At the hotel in Salt Lake City, Gabby started their YouTube channel called Nomadic Static. She posted the channel's first and only video before Brian returned to Salt Lake City on August 23rd. The couple checked out of the hotel the following day. On August 25th, Gabby would post to Instagram for the final time. She posted pictures from a monarch butterfly mural in Ogden, Utah. The same day, Gabby told her mother, Nicole, that she and Brian were headed to the Teton National Park in Wyoming. On the 26th, both Gabby and Brian were seen in the area around Teton National Park. They were seen at a convenience store where the owner later said they seemed happy. Then, on the afternoon of the 27th, the couple were spotted at a restaurant in Jackson Hole called Mary Piglet's. While there, Brian got into an argument with the staff and was reported to be very aggressive. A little while after they had left the restaurant, Gabby came back in and apologized for Brian's behavior. The same day, Gabby sent a Snapchat message to a friend saying they were going to Yellowstone National Park next, and her mother Nicole got a text message from Gabby that read, quote, "Can you help Stan? I just keep getting his voicemail and missed calls." Stan was Gabby's grandfather, and Nicole said she never called him by his name. It was very out of character for her, and it's possible that Gabby was dead by then. After they had left Mary Piglet's, they drove 40 minutes north to the Spread Creek dispersed camping area where they were spotted by another travel vlogger. That woman, Jen Bethune, ended up capturing the couple's van on her video, which she later handed over to the authorities. On August 29th, the couple driving in the area picked up a man who was hitchhiking near Coulter's Bay, which was about 16 miles or 25 kilometers north of the Spread Creek camping area. It turned out to be Brian, and he offered the couple $200 for a ride to Jackson. He told the couple that he had been camping for a few days without his fiancée because she was back at their van working on their website. After driving a ways, the couple said that there had been some confusion about where they were going. Jackson, Wyoming, and Jackson Hole, Wyoming are pretty much right next to each other, and it seemed as though Brian wanted to go to one of the towns, but the couple were going to the other town. Brian freaked out and asked to be let out right where they were. That was the last time the couple saw him, but he found another ride about 15 minutes later. That driver dropped him off at the Spread Creek dispersed camping area just before 7 p.m. The next day, Nicole received a text message from Gabby that read, quote, "No service in Yosemite," which was strange because they hadn't been at Yosemite National Park and hadn't seemed to have any plan to go there. Yosemite is in California, and it's not uncommon for people to get Yosemite and Yellowstone mixed up. It's believed that Gabby was no longer alive by then, and Brian was using her phone to make people believe she was okay. It was Brian who mistakenly wrote Yosemite while likely in a panicked state. Either way, it was also unlikely that Gabby had written that text even if she made the mistake, since Brian was already driving back to Florida by then. Brian returned to Northport alone with the van at 10:26 a.m. on September 1st, 2021. We know that because the van was captured by a license plate reader as he exited I-75 into town. In order to get to Northport by then, he would have had to have left Spring Creek dispersed camping area before that text was sent. He used Gabby's debit card to make purchases on his trip back to Florida. At that point, Gabby's family had no idea that Brian had returned home alone. They hadn't heard from her for a while, but she was an adult who was out traveling, so they gave her some space. But by September 10th, they finally reported her missing. Eventually, the case got national attention, and everybody began trying to help find Gabby Petito. Well, everyone except for Brian Laundrie and his family. When Brian was finally tracked down safe and sound back at his parents' home, nobody in his family would say a word to the authorities. They immediately had a lawyer step in. On September 14th, he made a public statement that said, quote, "This is understandably an extremely difficult time for both the Petito family and the Laundrie family. It is our understanding that a search has been organized for Miss Petito in or near the Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. On behalf of the Laundrie family, it is our hope that the search for Miss Petito is successful and that Miss Petito is reunited with her family. On the advice of counsel, the Laundrie family is remaining in the background at this juncture and will have no further comment." Get the fuck out of here. What a bunch of cowards. Brian was on a road trip with Gabby, his fiancée, and then just suddenly returned home without her, and you guys are going to stay in the background? Understandably, Gabby's family responded. Their counsel made a statement that said, quote, "We believe you know the location of where Brian left Gabby. We beg you to tell us. As a parent, how could you let us go through this pain and not help us?" From there, a number of statements were made back and forth between the legal representatives of the Laundries and Gabby's family. Brian was refusing to help, and his family seemed dead set on protecting their son over finding a missing young woman. Authorities named Brian a person of interest in Gabby's disappearance. Yeah, no shit. On September 17th, Brian's mother announced that Brian was also missing. She said that Brian had gone on a hike at the Carlton Reserve near Sarasota days earlier and never returned. Of course, that just looked more like his family was helping him hide, so people started protesting outside of their house. The vehicle that Brian had driven to the reserve was found parked there, and eventually his family went and picked it up. Not long after, authorities got a warrant to seize that vehicle, the van, which actually belonged to Gabby, and an external hard drive. Another item taken from the Laundrie home was a letter written to Brian from his mother with the words "burn after reading" written on the envelope. In the letter, Roberta explained a number of things she would do to help her son out in a variety of situations. One example was that, if he went to jail, she would bake him a cake with a knife or saw in it. You know, because they'll never figure that out. While the search for Brian was starting in Florida, the search for Gabby was narrowing down in Wyoming. Jen Bethune had remembered seeing the white van on the footage she had captured, and when the missing persons notice went out, she gave the footage to the authorities. She and her husband showed them exactly where they had seen the van, and a search team used that as their starting point. On September 19th, Gabby's body was found about 800 feet or 250 meters from where the van had been parked. Her autopsy revealed that she had died from blunt force injuries to her head and neck and by manual strangulation. This was no accident. This was not an argument that got out of hand and Gabby fell and hit her head. Brian Laundrie beat Gabby and then put his hands around her throat and squeezed for minutes. Depending on the person, it could take as little as a few seconds for them to pass out. Gabby having been very physically active means it would likely have taken much longer. That means Brian chose to crush her throat while he looked in her panicked eyes, as she likely begged for her life before finally passing out. But that doesn't mean the victim is dead. The killer must then continue to put pressure on the neck for 4 to 5 minutes to ensure the victim dies. That's a long time. Hit pause and wait 4 minutes before continuing to watch this video. It might as well be an eternity. It was a long, slow death that Brian carried out purposefully and deliberately. He is an absolute monster and his family was not far off by protecting him. The next day, the Northport Police Department executed a search warrant at the Laundrie home. The same day, the U.S. District Court of Wyoming issued a federal arrest warrant for Brian Laundrie for, quote, knowingly and with intent to defraud, used an unauthorized debit card and obtained things of value aggregating to $1,000 or more between August 30th and September 1st. It had nothing to do with Gabby's death. It was just because he had used her debit card when he traveled back to Florida after he brutally murdered her. For the rest of September and into October, Gabby's family as well as citizens all over the country were convinced that Brian's family was helping him hide out. Gabby's parents went on national television to talk about the Laundrie's suspicious behavior and to call Brian a coward. Authorities finally retrieved some of Brian's personal items from the Laundrie home and used cadaver dogs in the reserve. On October 20th, they found an item that belonged to Brian, and when they searched the area further, they found human remains along with a backpack and a revolver. It was about 3/4 of a mile or 1.2 kilometers from where he had left the car. Dental records confirmed that the remains belonged to Brian and that he had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Inside the backpack was a notepad where Brian had written about what had happened to Gabby in Wyoming. In the note, Brian professed his love for Gabby and then claimed that she had fallen while they were running across a creek back to the van. She had supposedly injured herself, though he wasn't really clear about what she had hurt besides having a bump on her head. He said he tried to carry her back to the van, but he couldn't, so he built a fire to try to warm her up, since it was near freezing and she was wet. When she would fall asleep, he would wake her up, afraid that she had a concussion. But when she woke up, she would scream in pain and be upset that he woke her. He wrote, quote, I don't know the extent of Gabby's injuries, only that she was in extreme pain. I ended her life. I thought it was merciful. That's what she wanted. But I see now all the mistakes I made. I was in shock. But from the moment I decided, took away her pain, I knew I couldn't go on without her. You mean to tell me that within weeks of being questioned by the police regarding an incident of domestic violence, where Gabby is showing clear signs of being in an abusive relationship, she got injured and you strangled her to death out of mercy? No. That's a line of bullshit that Brian created because he's a narcissist and couldn't handle people knowing what he had actually done. Another detail about Brian's actions after he murdered Gabby, outside of sending text messages to make it look like she was still alive, was that he changed the location of her AllTrails account to a town in Puerto Rico. AllTrails is a smartphone app that you can use to document hikes you've taken. During the search for Gabby, some people did believe she was in Puerto Rico, but it would have been nearly impossible for her to have somehow gotten there. With confirmation that Gabby had died by Brian's hands and him unable to be brought to justice over it, questions began to arise about just how much the Laundrie family actually knew about the murder and for how long. An investigation uncovered some damning details about the timeline of Gabby's murder and when the Laundries had hired an attorney. The FBI believes that Gabby was murdered on August 27th and then Brian made a phone call to his parents on the 28th. one that lasted quite a while. The very same day, his parents contacted an attorney, something that was a clear sign that Brian had confessed to them and they were preparing to protect him. It's speculated that after Brian killed Gabby, he left on foot, possibly intending to hide out. He may have called his parents around then and they convinced him to come back home, so he hitchhiked back to the van and returned to Florida. Of course, there was also the burn after reading letter that was written to Brian from his mother. Gabby's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Brian's estate and sued his parents for infliction of emotional distress. They said that it was clear that they knew where Gabby was and what had happened to her, but they intentionally kept that information from them. The wrongful death suit was settled for $3 million, and the other suit was settled for an undisclosed amount. I understand that a parent wants to protect their child, but there is a point when your protection becomes involvement. Knowing that a young woman has been murdered and keeping that a secret makes you an accessory to that murder, and I feel like the Laundrie should have faced some sort of criminal punishment for that. An independent investigation into the Moab Police Department's handling of the traffic stop found that the officers should have made an arrest during the stop. They never followed up with the person who called 911, the person who witnessed the abuse. Then they just took the word of a woman who was hysterical and clearly trying to minimize her boyfriend's actions, and a man who didn't seem to care about the incident at all. The department said they do believe that the officers were trying to be kind to the couple, but they would be implementing all of the suggestions made by the investigation. Over the course of the situation, as national attention grew, people started coming up with their own theories about what had happened to Gabby. Many people online started using the pictures that Gabby had posted to speculate about the case, and some of the theories were pretty wild. Some people claimed that Gabby was already dead in the photo of her sitting in an old tub at the hot springs. That's clearly not true, since there are other images of Gabby at the hot springs where she's clearly alive. She was also seen by witnesses after that point in time. Other people posted that some pictures were staged and that Brian was forcing Gabby to pose at gunpoint. One strange theory was based on a photo of Brian posted where the book Lullaby by Chuck Palahniuk can be seen in the foreground. People claimed that Brian was reading the book and that it was the inspiration for him to kill Gabby. The truth is, both Brian and Gabby were fans of the author Chuck Palahniuk, who is famous for writing the novel Fight Club, a book that Gabby can be seen reading in another photo. On the surface, Brian Laundrie was an average guy, but under that lived a monster just waiting to come out. The warning signs were there, but unfortunately they went unnoticed and a young girl's life was cut short. If you're a fan of true crime, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. You can also hit like or leave us a comment. You can check out our other show, Somewhere Sinister, on YouTube or anywhere that you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to support the show, check out our merchandise at thisismonsters.com. The link is in the description. Thanks again, and be safe.